We'd be listening to some very fine music, Rob, but
Be bouncing my head a little bit.
as it turns out, we're not. But hey, welcome to the Common Good Podcast, where things on my end just went nutty again here. Robb Ryerse, Doug Pagitt here. Doug is in Minneapolis. What am I, Herschel Walker? You know this thing, Herschel Walker, when he was a Minnesota Viking, would always refer to himself as Herschel Walker and refer to himself in the third person. But I'm in Minneapolis. Rob there, just tuckered away somewhere just outside of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Hey, Rob. Hey, lots of things happen in the... Hey, Rob.
Hi there.
Oh, did I lose you? Okay. Oh, sorry, man. I thought I lost you. Got all nervous for a second. Nice to see you. A lot of things happening in our political front. Of course, it's Tuesday, so around here on the Common Good Podcast, we want to chat about politics and all things going on in the political side. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the abortion front. A number of states are putting in place either through a constitutional amendment to their state or a special legislative session, bans on abortion. That's Kansas and Indiana, relatively, and just a lot of other things happen there. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the state of politics overall. Our good friend, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is once again out misunderstanding Christian nationalism and pushing for it. So we have a little reminder of that. And I have a little rant to go on about some things. But let's start in with the weather, Rob. Yesterday, I got one of those notices on my phone, I think comes from Weather app, that said the perfect summer day. We're in a good run here in Minneapolis. So how's it feeling there in Arkansas?
You know, it's hot. It's just hot. We are in day after day after day of over 100 degrees, and it's just hot. But I've been trying to get out in the morning before it gets too hot to, ride my bike a little bit and get a little exercise before I retreat to the air-conditioned world of goodness.
Like, is it hot like the people in England are having to deal with? Is it that?
Yeah. I mean, yesterday it was 106.
Wow, that's a real deal, man. 106.
Yeah, it's seriously hot.
Yeah, and I know it's sort of hot all over the place. Just something. And look, we all know, we've all said it. We should say it over and over. Weather is not climate. Yep, but at some point, weather becomes climate, right? So you can have a weather event, but a series of weather events that become the regular then becomes climate. So.
Yes, climate has impact on weather. You experience weather because of the climate you live in.
Yeah. And so climate change at some point
Doug,
brings about some weather change. Mm-hmm.
Before we jump into news stories, can we make some news today?
Sure.
Yeah. So we have this little initiative at Vote Common Good called Candidates for Common Good.
Yes,
where
sir.
Just like we invite voters to use the common good as their voting criteria, we invite candidates who are running for office to use the common good as their governing criteria should they be elected. And we ask them to take our Love in Politics pledge and to say, hey, we're not in this for ourselves. We're in this for everybody. And it's much less about kind of agreeing on particular policies. And it's much more about a shared value that the common good is going to be this driving focus for our how we organize ourselves politically. And so, we have these candidates for common good all over the country. And today on our social media, maybe folks have already seen, we have 17 new candidates for common good.
Unbelievable.
Did you just hit me with crickets?
I did because I pushed the wrong button on my thing. I thought it said cheers and it said crickets. I got a little screen down here that tells me these sounds.
So if you don't mind, Doug, I'd love to just run down through this list real quick.
Yeah.
And encourage people.
Let's hear them.
You can go to votecommongood.com and you can see the full list. We now have 46 candidates for common good from 22 states across the country. and they range in offices that they're running for, and it's super exciting. So these 17 candidates that are joining the slate today, I'm going to mention one first, and then I'm going to run down the rest of the list. So first of all, because Arkansas represents hard in candidates for common good, the Washington County Judge, candidate for Washington County Judge, Josh Moody in Washington County, Arkansas, is a candidate for common good, and we're happy to have Josh. For those who might not know, I live in Arkansas, and Josh was over the other day, and we were sitting on my porch talking, and Doug's now wearing his T-shirt from
I forgot
candidate for
to put
common
it on.
good, Kelly Kraut. Yeah, that's awesome. So everybody else who is running here, there, look at that. Everybody else is a candidate for Congress, the United States House of Representatives. So in Maryland, District 1 is Heather Mazur. In Missouri, District 6, Henry Martin. In California, District 16, Rishi Kumar. In North Dakota, just no district there in North Dakota.
Just North Dakota. That's enough.
North Dakota at large.
Enough said.
Mark Haugen. In Mississippi, District 3, Shawaski Young. In Texas, 24, Jan McDowell. Shout out to Jan, who is plugging the Vote Common Good podcast on her Twitter account today. Thank you, Jan.
Okay,
appreciate that.
Thank you, Jan.
In Kentucky,
good on you, as they say.
Good on you, Jan. Good on you. We should do something with that.
Yeah.
Good on you.
Okay.
We need to put that in the hopper.
All right. What happened there? What turned you on to good on you?
Vote Common Good.
Oh my gosh, how did I miss that? Vote Common Good on you.
Yeah, Common Good on you. Good on you. That should be like the name of our merch. Would be like Good on you. Anyways, yeah, that's there's something there.
I
so
like where you're going there. We're onto
Kentucky
something.
District 1, Jimmy Osbrooks. Georgia District 6, Bob Christian. California 2, Jared Huffman. Colorado 5, David Torres. North Carolina 8, Scott Huffman. We're going back to back on the Huffmans.
We got
Jared and
let's not get huffy here.
Iowa 4, Ryan Melton. Kentucky 2, Hank Linderman. Pennsylvania 1, Ashley Ehas. Pennsylvania 11, Bob Hollister. And Alabama 3, Lynn Vesey. 46 candidates for common good all over the country. Amazing people that are saying, hey, we want to use the common good as our governing criteria. Mm-hmm. You can go to votecommongood.com and click on the candidates for common good, learn all about them, get links to their website and social media, that kind of thing. If you want to follow along, see if there are candidates in your area, and, holler at us if you are running for office, or somebody who's running for office that would be interested in this. Shoot me an email, rob@votecommongood.com. It's Rob, ROBB, @votecommongood.com. Would love to be in touch and be a support and a help. This is just one of the ways we engage candidates and support them. We also do a lot of messaging coaching. We do in-district events. We do networking with candidates, helping them get connected with religious leaders in their district. And, we've got a lot going on that we think it's really important, not just to have a message, but to have really good messengers.
Yeah.
And candidates for common good are really great messengers for
and we're not a political party per se, like some political parties, but we're a coalition. We're a good, solid coalition of people that care about the common good. Yeah. Hey, one of the things, Rob, that I hope all politicians of the common good do is to make something more than just their own personal experience be their governing criteria. So I
Yeah.
just have a little commentary before we get started today. Over the last few days, I've been hearing myriad of news reports, news commentators, politicians talking about politics in a way that to me seems overly personal for people in elected office. And what I mean is that they talk about what they're going to do or what they should do based on like their personal experience, right? In the January 6th hearings, to hear people reflecting on that members of Congress, Republican members of Congress specifically, not wanting to act on what happened on January 6th, even though they were there and in the building, like that shouldn't matter that they were there and in the building. This shouldn't be, oh, wow, I was personally affronted by what happened and my life was put at risk. So therefore we should change the Electoral College Act, or we should remove the last former loser, twice impeached president from ever being able to run for office again. Shouldn't have anything to do with whether you're there or not, right? But there's like this narrative that people think, well, boy, if someone was personally impacted, then they should really care about something. There's some balance in our politics about it can't be so impersonal that it doesn't matter who people are. But on the other hand, it can't just be, well, hey, I said, you know what? I was actually, I was in district that day. I wasn't there in Washington, so it really doesn't impact me.
Yeah.
You weren't there, Rob. I wasn't there. Everybody listening to us wasn't in the building, and we deeply care about it. But it doesn't only come up there. It comes up when they'd say things like, Donald Trump's own children even said to him. Like, who cares that it was his child who said it to him? Like, if anyone's thinking, well, a president probably should have some caution, but if his daughter comes to him, what? Like, what? Why do we bring that up? Or someone who I respect a lot and will continue to vote for probably every time he runs, Pete Buttigieg, said this on I think it was on Jake Tappert's show on Sunday on CNN. He was asked about how the Republicans did not vote in the House to support putting in legislation gay marriage as law because the threat that Clarence Thomas said in the Supreme Court. And Pete Buttigieg said, now granted, Jake Tapper did say, how does that make you personally feel? Tapper went that direction, but what the Secretary of Transportation said was, I was in a room with a lot of those Congress people 2 hours before talking about transportation issues. Then they went out and voted against my marriage. Well, it shouldn't matter that they were in a room with you, Pete Buttigieg. Like and it shouldn't just be about your merit. Like, I get it that you're trying to personalize all this, but I just think we have to be really careful that our politics aren't talked about in ways that simply feed the personal impulses of a person impacted, especially elected officials. You run for office because you want public service. You run for office because you want to work toward the common good. You don't run for office because it somehow personally benefits you. And anyway, I just think we need to note that, pay attention to it. And if live stream podcasts can turn into prayers to the political gods, may it be so, that we would stop this over personalization of the motivations for what people are doing. Like, people should care about the right things based on its impact on other people or the rule of law, or like shouldn't matter if you personally have a stake in the claim or not. I don't want our politicians to be somehow robotic or simply following polls. They need to be a person who's leading and has personal impulse. But there's a better and different way to talk about it. So thank you for the rant, for allowing me the space to rant about this.
Yeah, I think it's, my guess is that most of these folks would probably agree with you, but there's some kind of rhetorical component to trying to personalize it. But what it does is it does kind of reinforce this idea of that essentially lacks empathy.
Yeah.
There's, in this thing that okay, it only matters if it personally affects me.
Right.
Or the people I love.
Right. What's in it for you? How does this impact you? What's your social location and why you would care about this?
Yep. And whether it's, you only care about you know, people's rights, people's experiences when you have a loved one who fits in a certain category, or
Yes.
you have you personally have been affected by something, or you know, and so, I think what you're calling for, Doug, is a much broader empathy that goes beyond like your own personal experience, your own, personal network. You've got to get beyond that. There are things that are good, like whether have personal experience
Yeah.
with that or not.
Yeah, and look, I mean, what Pete Buttigieg, I think Barbara makes a great point that Pete's making on the chat. She says, I think what Pete was doing was making this an example for who a gay man is for people who don't often know many gay men. Well, that's a very good point. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's what he's doing. I also think that there's an impulse in our politics to turn everything into social identity as the only reason you should be able to say something about it. And I don't think that's a healthy way for us to pursue our politics, because I think we're going to be in a situation where then you just get personal proclivities, which is something a lot of us are talking about the Supreme Court on. Like, you shouldn't be making these rulings about what the Constitution says because you agree with them or not. Like, it's really shocking how often the current Supreme Court, has rulings that just so happen to dovetail exactly with 5 justices' own personal opinions. What are the chances of that? Like, that shouldn't be very good. You should be passing laws or making judicial determinations for things you'd say, like, this isn't at all how I would see it or how I'd want to do it, or this isn't how I would behave personally. But this is what the law should allow, or this is what the Constitution gives room for. That's how we should be acting. We need to call ourselves to that. Now, look, it's probably good that our politics have become a little bit more knowable and personal, right? That's probably overall a good thing. But, the level to which we all feel a level of, first name basis with, our politicians also feels a little bit like there's this radio commercial for a jeweler here in the Twin Cities area where I live, in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. Ray, boy, now I've forgotten the name. The Moeller Jewelers, where their line is, "You have a friend in the diamond business." Right? It's a great little tagline, right? So they talk about things, and the guy says, "I go around the world and I find these diamonds and the very best ones. So if you're looking for a diamond for that special loved one, remember, you've got a friend in the diamond business." It's really colloquial and great. You're like, "Hey, I got a friend in the diamond business. I should probably, I know a guy." That shouldn't be our politics. Hey, I know a guy, or I know a woman, or I know somebody who, is sort of on my side, and then we're just going to divide up political power by this level of social identity. I wish what Mayor Pete or Secretary Pete had said was, yeah, look, it's very personal for me, and it has great impact on my life. And these Congress people who voted on this, it might not be personal for them, but they can tap into other people's lives and know and care. And I think he got there, and I'm not even blaming Pete particularly, and it's not what Ivanka says, and it's not what a CNN person says. It's not that level of detail. It's that our culture of politics right now is overly, why are you talking about this, as if you have to have a personal reason to be talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, one more piece of commentary, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Liz Cheney was asked on the Sunday shows, do you think it's worth it that you're going to lose your seat in the House for this, being on this January 6th commission and telling the truth about Donald Trump's, leadership of the insurrection and the big lie? And she said, absolutely, I do. I wish what politicians would always say is, oh, hang on a minute. Being an elected official in Congress, in the Senate, and the mayors, as a mayor, as the president, this is an act of service that I'm granted the privilege to do. This is not a career that I'm giving up. Like, my job is to act as a public servant. That's what we're doing. Not I've achieved some level of respect and now I have to give up all that level of respect. Like, this is also the kind of thing that I think we need to just continue to message in our politics is, if someone's going to lose a race because they stand up for something, they're not losing a great job they worked hard to get. they're losing a chance to serve the people. So I wish the response would be, I really think I serve these people well, and I've loved to serve these people of my country and of my state or of my district. And so, yeah, it's going to be really heartbreaking that I can't do that. But not this thing of like ascendancy to this position. And wow, someone's political career is being ruined by standing up to Donald Trump. All that kind of stuff. The rest of us just need to say to the Washington class or to the mayor class or to your city council class or whomever it is, that's not what these jobs are. These jobs are not your career path.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I'm in favor of term limits, even though I'm sort of against them for other reasons, but it would be a good reason to say, no, this is a function you perform for a period of time, not an accomplishment you achieve.
Yes. And while we're at it, if we want to, to stay on this same kind of rhetorical bus, if we need to stop referring to the offices that are held by these individuals as their seat, their office, because it's not theirs.
Like their job,
like they have no right to it any more than anyone else does. It's not that someone is challenging their seat or, like, no. Every whatever period of time it is, whether it's 2 years for Congress, 6 years for the Senate, 4 years for the president, or up or down the ballot, whatever the time frame is, it's all up for grabs every time.
Right.
Like
it's not yours.
It's not yours. It's not yours.
Yep. When I was a college athlete, you only have 4 years for this, but that's the way our coach talked about the positions was, hey, this is so-and-so, he was the starter in this basketball position last year, but the reason we, have practices and do preseason and have, practice before the season, we're deciding on our starting lineup, and it's open for everybody. Everyone's making a run at that position if you want it. And there might be reasons that person would be a better, and there often was, and when I had that role in the basketball team, I didn't want to give it up. I fought for it and worked hard and, hired someone to stand behind a wall. And when someone was going to be challenging me came around the corner, they were going to hit him in the leg with a stick and break their knee. No, hang on. That was Tanya Harding. No, hang on a minute. I got that confused with somebody. But normally, you just work and fight for it and work really hard. It's a totally different perspective than this is my seat. I even hear some congressional and Senate people refer to the seat they're in by someone who was in it previously. Like I'm sitting in the seat that has been held by so-and-so. I just think all this imperial narrative about politics just really has to go.
Yep. Totally with you.
All right. Well, now we're not a party, so we can't add that to the common good, but we can sort of hint and nudge people along the way to talk about public service. All politics is public service, and not something else. All right, do you want to talk about someone who I think misunderstands her role as a congressional representative in the
absolutely
in the Congress representing Georgia? I don't even know. I can't even remember from Marjorie Taylor Greene what district she's in. Do you recall what district she's in?
She's district, I believe it's 14. She's being challenged by a candidate for common good by the name of Marcus Flowers that everybody should run over to voteCommonGood.com and search for Georgia, find Marcus Flowers and check him out. Check out his website, check out his social media. He is going to try to make Congresswoman Greene a one-term congresswoman and take her seat. No, it's not her seat. It's the people of Georgia's seat.
It's hard to believe she just won her election in 2020, isn't it? I mean, when you she's
a one-termer.
Yep. You're like, this person has only been around for 2.5 years, and she's so deep in my psyche. All right, so if you don't know who she is an outspoken religious person. She's also an outspoken MAGA supporter. She's also an outspoken hate monger. She's really difficult person in my view. Rob, you found this tweet. Do you want to give any context to this?
So here she is speaking at this Turning Point USA conference, which is this gathering of conservatives that happened over the weekend. I think Charlie Kirk, who is some famous guy within kind of this religious or this conservative commentary, and put on this conference. I think she's speaking here to a group of students.
Yeah.
At the Turning Point conference, and she's talking about I think where this clip picks up, she has already talked about nationalism and why, in her sense, being a nationalist is good and important because it's about putting your country first. And now she begins to qualify that nationalism a bit, and she has this to say.
Here she is.
Now, if the Republican Party becomes a party that actually does the things we say we're about, then we are going to be a party for nationalism. Isn't that right?
No, that's not what the word means.
But then I think there's another element we need to have, and I'm a Christian. How many Christians do we have here? So you see, I also call myself a Christian nationalist, and that's not a bad word. That's actually a good thing, right? And there's nothing wrong with leading with your faith, because we should lead with our faith. Because if we're doing that, then we're doing the right thing. It doesn't mean we're perfect, it just means we're doing the right thing. And I think that's what the Republican Party needs to be about.
Yeah, okay, so here's the thing. Look, nationalism is a perspective of governance, sure. I think it's a wrong one. I think it's wrong-headed. I think we're better being internationalists and all.
Yep.
Being a Christian person who holds to nationalism does not make you a Christian nationalist. That is a different thing. Like the idea that the adjective that you use to describe your faith tradition combined with nationalism is Christian nationalist, that's not what people mean by the term Christian nationalists. Christian nationalists say that the United States of America is preset to lean toward Christian ethic, Christian idea, and Christian leaderships, and therefore it should be led and pushed forward by a Christian understanding. The nation should be led by Christian voices and forces, not that an individual person who holds a faith would then say, I think we should have a more nationalism kind of perspective. Those are not the same concepts. So if Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't understand that when people critique Christian nationalism, what they are critiquing is not that Christian people hold a view of how the United States should interact in our public policy or international policy. That's not what Christian nationalism is. It's just shocking.
So that
was like a TikTok rant right there. Sorry about that.
Oh, seriously. Let's break this down a little bit. First of all, I think what Marjorie Taylor Greene does is she confuses nationalism with patriotism. Maybe I think what she is appealing to is this sense of patriotism that people love their country, and what she tries to do is turn that into something, more nefarious. So nationalism kind of starts with this belief that humanity is divisible into mutually distinct, coherent, homogeneous groups of people that share certain traits like language or religion or ethnicity or culture. And the idea is that it's best for these groups not to mix. It's best for these groups to kind of stay together and be led as sovereign national groups whose cultural identity is being preserved by their government.
Yeah, that's
And
what
this,
you're saying. That's what a nationalism. That's
what
when some people
nationalism-
speak of nationalism. That's what they're referring to as an ethnic, cultural basis that's supported by your government, and each country is its own culturally ethnic, distinct group of people. And some nations are built that way.
Yeah.
The nation of Israel is a nationalist or organization, right? In some sense, because it was formed for the Jewish people to have a nation. Be something similar to a nation state. It's not how the United States is organized.
Exactly. And what happens with this is that nationalism very easily gives way to the worst impulses in people, racism and white supremacy, that becomes the base. It's basically our people that look like us are better than everybody else. Our culture needs to be preserved. Anybody that would try to join our country, be a part of our country, is a threat to our culture. And you see this playing out with racists in the country, and in the sense of like, if you love your country, then you are a nationalist. So this is what nationalism is. It's this idea that my country first, and by my country, it's people that look like me, talk like me, think like me, have faith like me. Those are the people that are my country. And so what Marjorie Taylor Greene does by baptizing that with Christian nationalism is the idea that America is a Christian nation founded in a Judeo-Christian ethic for the purpose of being one of, you will find people talking with language that like America is, God's chosen nation to preserve freedom on the earth. And this idea then that Christianity, people of Christian faith, should have a place of privilege in that society. That is what, is so very dangerous, because this idea of Christian nationalism is, we've got to protect our culture, our language, our people, our faith, and we need to run everything because our nation is a Christian nation, and it excludes all sorts of people, and it intentionally is opposed to any kind of multiculturalism, any kind of tolerance. I mean, we see it playing out in so many different ways, and for like it reflexively goes against any kind of like actual sense of what I'm struggling for words, because there are values here, like that. Like there are two different sets of values and visions of who we ought to be as a country, and what's important to us, and that is just very clearly at stake and very starkly. Marjorie Taylor Greene here is saying the quiet part out loud, the stuff that like has not been so articulated by elected leaders. I mean, she's saying it in very stark terms.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I also say, I think she's just confusing words. I mean, look, there's been an argument in the United States from its founding because of the way the United States as a set of colonies came about. There was a period of time when some people left other places in Europe and came to the United States to establish outposts for certain religious and ethnic groups. That's what they did. That's what the Pilgrims did. That's what the Puritans did. Pennsylvania was created as a place for certain religious expressions. That was a notion in the United States. There was another notion when the colonies started to form into a separate union that was going to become the United States, that was, no, this is a place where anyone can come and everyone can participate. And those two arguments have been ongoing in the history of the United States.
Yeah.
It boils down to the question, is the United States fundamentally a Christian nation? Well, some people were trying to argue that it was, and many people were arguing that it was not. And we've landed on the side, for the most part, that it's not. In other words, we established a freedom of religion and freedom from religion clause in the Constitution. So what that did was the reason there was the reason the First Amendment came in was the First Amendment to say that there would be freedom of religion was to answer the question, was there going to be a religious demand or a cultural demand or an ethnic demand? That was the notion. Now, they didn't totally deal with all the cultural and ethnic issues because they still lean toward white male landowners having different levels of access and power. So they hadn't worked all of those things out. But then later, in other amendments to the Constitution, we did. So this question about is the United States fundamentally for one group of people or not has been an ongoing discussion, and like a lot of them, has been settled. But some people don't want it settled. It's unclear if what Marjorie Taylor Greene is hinting at here is that conversation. Now, 3 years ago, when the Unite the Right rally was marching in Charlottesville, Virginia, and they were chanting blood and soil, that is exactly what they were saying.
Yep.
Specifically, they were making an argument, an old European argument, that citizenship is connected to one of two things: blood, meaning did you come from the bloodline, or two, were you born on this soil? Because if you didn't have one of those two things, you weren't a real citizen. In other words, immigrants can't be citizens, was the argument. Shocking to a lot of people, that's something that people through the history of the United States have held to, and it's been a wrong-headed notion all along, and we have to take it on full frontal, right? You're right, that's a thing. And sometimes that's combined with being Christian, and then there's Christian nationalism. If you're interested in all this, we have a whole curriculum coming out next week on the threat of Christian nationalism, coming to an email box really near you if you're watching this. And if you're not on our Vote Common Good email list, get on it, because then we'll be sure to send it to you.
You got to get on it.
But then there's another kind of nationalism, and that's the nationalism that sees itself in contrast to globalism. Now, this is the same kind of phrase, nation first, America first jargon, that's not necessarily leaning into ethnic, cultural, blood and soil nationalism, aka the Puritans. This is saying the United States needs to stay independent as a political entity on the global stage. Don't be running the UN. Don't be in all these international groups like NATO. Don't be the police of all the other countries. Get out of international agreements. Don't be in the Paris Climate Accord. All of that stuff is talking about how the United States government should interact vis-a-vis its citizens to the rest of the world. That's a different argument, right? So there's many people. If you are a Christian nationalist, blood and soil person, you're also probably someone who doesn't want you in any of those international things, right? But you could not believe in those international causes without being a blood and soil nationalist. This is where the nationalism thing gets confusing. My guess is that Representative Greene isn't going this deep into all of this. I think she's bent toward the Christian nationalism side. It's the water she swims in. She believes we should not be interacting at a global level. But that thing, that let's get out of international entanglements, if you hear conservatives, and Rob, I don't know if when you were hanging around a lot of Republicans as one, maybe y'all talked about this too, people would say things like the UN is really the problem, and we can't have our soldiers being held to world courts, all that. That's a kind of nationalism, right? That's what some people hear when Trump says America first, is they're saying not globalism, not the global elites, not these international groups. I'm not sure where she is. So someone could hold to that, and they could be a Christian person who holds to that. And they could even believe that their Christian faith teaches them that, the nation should be independent, whatever. That doesn't make you a Christian nationalist. What Christian nationalism is this other thing that you were describing. And that, if that's what Marjorie Taylor Greene is pitching, She doesn't even know that's what she's pitching, because her idea is, I'm a Christian person who thinks that our nation should be put in front of all the other nations as a
Yeah.
governing philosophy. It's like,
Yes.
that is not
It's
Christian
like
nationalism.
yeah, right. Yeah, there's like this is like are you a like it is how much is the word Christian an adjective? Are you a like a Christian rock star,
Yes.
or are you a rock star who makes Christian music? Like, if you're a Christian rock star, does that mean the content of your music is Christian, or is that just mean that you happen to be a person of Christian faith who makes rock music? It's the same kind of thing of like, we're a little unclear on what she means by her adjective,
And the problem is that Hobby Lobby case specifically, or the baker baking the cake for the same-sex marriage, legally is conflating these issues.
Yes.
Because what Hobby Lobby is saying is, us as the owners, we have a Christian belief and commitment and ethic. Therefore, our company is a Christian company selling like hobby goods, model airplanes and stuff. Not even, you're not in the religion business. You're a for-profit company that now you're saying, but because I'm a Christian who's an owner, we now have a Christian company. And that's the thing that, first of all, pastors, leaders, spiritual directors should be teaching people. That's not the proper understanding of using Christian. And as another point, pastor to pastor here, Rob.
Yeah.
The best way to be a Christian is not to be looking out for yourself. It's not to use your Christianity to benefit you. Right? Like, could we just pull this thing back for a minute and remind each other?
I kind of remember Jesus telling stories about, like, I don't know, not taking the seat at the front, not taking the best for yourself, like intentionally not trying to privilege yourself over others. The first will be last and the last will be first.
So maybe being Christian and having a company is that you shouldn't be out there trying to say, now we run a Christian company.
And, this idea that, and I want to be, I want to be very clear that I'm speaking particularly from a white male perspective, because I think in other contexts,
if anyone's watching, that's absolutely clear. But I guess if they're listening, it might not be so clear.
Yes, but I am saying this for white Christian cisgendered men. Our rights are not the most important thing. And we as people who have had much privilege and much power in this, whatever the purpose of the, the American experiment has been, it has benefited us. If we are people of faith, who take the Bible and the teachings of Jesus seriously, we really, really ought to consider whether or not our rights and our push for our rights is consistent at all with the teachings of our faith. Now, and I just say this very clearly to white Christian cisgendered men, because I think people in other circumstances, there's a much different way to talk about that. But as people of power, people in power, I'm not sure our rights are the most important thing if we're coming from the perspective of faith. Seems to me like there's a whole lot in the New Testament about giving that stuff up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and for people who think that not every individual holds the amount of power, so therefore it doesn't apply to them, that's not what you're referring to. You're referring to the fact that the system is designed to give benefit to some versus others. It's one of the problems in the United States.
Yes.
that connects to what Marjorie Taylor Greene actually said, where she's like, well, I am a Christian, therefore that makes, and I believe in nationalism, therefore Christian nationalism. That's not how that phrase is used. That's not what it's referring to, right? It's not that the individual person thinks a thing, and therefore, look, if you want your governing philosophy to be, hey, everyone should be treated fair and equally in this country, then you look around, you're like, well, they're not treated fair and equally. Now, personally, I don't think the way you get to equity is to take away from some. I think the way you get to equity is to build capacity for all. And that's a real trick. If we continue to live in a zero-sum game, we're going to be in some real problems. So Marjorie Taylor Greene can't seem to organize her thinking, at least talking to a group of students, anything beyond simple 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah, and there's some word for this when A equals B and B equals C, but A doesn't equal C. I can't remember what the thing is, so someone should make fun of me on the internet about that. But whatever that is, that's what she's doing. I'm a Christian who holds to nationalism, therefore I'm a Christian nationalist. Oh my gosh. No, you're not. No, you're not. And the
she
point
might
of being,
be, but not for that reason.
not for thank you. Good point. Yes, that's probably true. If she wants to make her Christian nationalism argument, then she needs to say things like, this country was founded on a belief system of God and gave power to some people over other people, and there was a reason why this, and then say that, right? Say that
but
stuff.
What she's doing is she's equivocating these things, so that if you are a Christian who loves America, as an impressionable 15-year-old sitting there who says, oh yeah, I'm a Christian and I love America, I must be a Christian nationalist too. There's a recruitment element here. There's a hey, can't we all be Christian nationalists together? It's a good thing to be a Christian. Don't be scared by this idea. Like, she is inviting these young people to dip their toes in the water.
Okay, now you're onto something. You're saying she's being a little more nefarious here, that she's not
she's not fully explaining the idea of Christian nationalism to these kids. She's saying, hey, it's not bad to be a Christian nationalist. You don't have to understand all of it. She is like, this is a recruitment tool to say to these kids, hey, you can be a Christian nationalist too.
Well, I like where you're going. So you're suggesting she might be being somewhat deceitful here. She's intentionally defining it in a way it's not defined to make it more palatable for someone to later identify themselves as a Christian nationalist.
Yes.
Well, it's a bad tactic. It's not going to work. It won't take someone long to realize, I don't think that word means what you think it means. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. All right. Well, hey, seriously, no end to this. We are pushing hard in some training that we've got going on around Christian nationalism, and there's going to be a curriculum based on a online series of seminars that we did a year and a half ago. It's going to come out here in August. It's going to be available to all of you to share with family and friends. You can watch some of it. I feel like we should pull pieces of this clip and put in there because, that's the problem. This stuff just keeps rolling. We need to get somebody editing this. And Rob, we have a couple of other things that I thought would be worth talking about. Now, this one I think might confuse a few people. A lawyer in Mississippi probing Brett Favre, quarterback fame and Mississippian, turns out, which I didn't know until this story, and the former governor of Mississippi in a welfare fraud scandal. The lawyer for the state who pushed that was then fired after turning on these guys. But it turns out that Brett Favre is in some big trouble, not only for his participation, from what I understand from the news reports, being paid $1 million to give a speech, and the money that was used was money that was supposed to go to welfare in Mississippi, and it was being hived off. The poorest state in the country, and these people were stealing welfare money for years. This has been a multi-year probe going on. And as it turns out, not only did he get paid $1 million for doing this speech, and he knew that where the money was coming from, he didn't actually give the speech. Just got paid the $1 million. Now, it's part of what makes me feel this way a little bit is, oh my gosh, hang on a minute. No, don't worry about that. you see that thing on the screen right there? Is that, and I shouldn't be so petty about people that just happen to vote for Brett Favre, but I do. Brett Favre is a former Trump supporter. So, back from a while ago, Packers legend Brett Favre endorses Donald Trump. My vote is for what makes this country great, he says. Here's why I wanted to bring this up. Not just because I have anything against Brett Favre. I live in a state where he used to work. That's fine. The number of people who publicly support Donald Trump who then are found to be criminal is unbelievable. Like, it just never seems to end. That people who are up to no good, and by the way, Brett Favre's criminality here is not only tied to the welfare money, he's also inside of another bribery scandal with the former governor of Mississippi around getting some pharmaceutical business that he was investing in, some sweetheart deal in Mississippi, and he's going to be charged with that likely. It's just stunning to me how often somebody of high caliber or somebody who, in the political world or the rest of the popular world, and then they're just up to this crazy business, some kind of criminality. It's like they look at a guy and they think, that's my guy. He gets what I get. Cheat the system, steal, lie. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And it's kind of shameful that the reason I care more about this Mississippi scandal that took welfare money is that, it implicated Brett Favre and his connection to Trump, which is a judgment.
Brett Favre, who in the course of his NFL career, I just looked it up real quick. Just take a guess at how much money he earned just from his NFL contracts over a 20-year span in the NFL. He played for a long time.
$87 million.
$140 million.
$140 million. Yeah, but you know what? Some of that went to agents. Some of that went to taxes. Some of that went to, it's just hard to get by. Hard to get by.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I mean,
you got to do it on the speaking circuit.
Not even factoring in endorsements here, but, and Brett Favre was one of those guys who made tons of money off of endorsements. So clearly he ought to be stealing money from, fraudulently taking money from some of the poorest people in the country who desperately need it.
Yeah. Like, look, if you're Brett Favre and you're asked to speak at an event, like even say it's a charity event and it's going to raise some money, and you've earned $140 million in your life, in your day job.
Yeah.
Not even including, as you say, the other monies. Maybe what you say is, I come from the poorest state in the country. Maybe I could take that $1 million and give it to some people who are really suffering. My guess is the charitable contributions on the tax form don't include that $1 million in and out of his his bank account. So here's the other thing. This crowd, and they're like, well, whatever makes America great again, that's the thing that I really want. That's the perspective that I want. I just love his policies. I just really feel great about. Yeah, and then are you soon to be indicted? Is that also a possibility? Are you up to some criminal activity, or you don't have a problem with people who use their public fame for criminality? Because that's what it's starting to look like.
Yeah.
In all honesty, don't compare him to Barack Obama on any other standard, or even George H.W. Bush or George Bush or Bill Clinton. Just the number of close confidants and public supporters who then are charged with crimes. If I didn't think these things were all true, you'd think there's no other, this has to be people going after Trump supporters. There's no way his lawyers and his advisors and his chief of staff and all these people have lawyers. The guy is like a lawyer producing machine. Get around Donald Trump and you're either a criminal or you're soon to become one. Yeah. Anything else on Brett Favre?
Well, I just
Joker.
I think, I don't know, 12-year-old me or 13-year-old me would just want me to note the fact that the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase from WWF lore, maybe fellow WWE Hall of Famer, along with Donald Trump, who is a WWE Hall of Famer, Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, also scammed Mississippi welfare committed welfare fraud to the tune of almost just under $6 million, and has to repay it. And Ted DiBiase, now a outspoken evangelical Christian out there on the speaking circuit. All of this stuff goes together. But what's going on in Mississippi that like famous people can defraud their welfare systems?
Well, the governor's in on it. What's going on is this is a deep. This involves hundreds of people at high levels of government in Mississippi.
I'm gonna rant for a second here.
Please, I'm gonna give you full
screen.
How
about
for
all of you conservative Christians out there who have talked about welfare fraud? You've talked about that single mother who's committing welfare fraud. She just keeps getting pregnant so she can get more and more checks from the government. Like, your very subtle and thinly disguised racism is showing through, because here we have actual welfare fraud being done by white conservative men, powerful, rich, famous white men are committing welfare fraud. So the next time you want to complain that like some single mom is spending her food stamps on Doritos instead of, apples, why don't you just sit down and be quiet? Because the real crime is being committed by the Trump folks.
Well said. Look, it is really something here that Mississippi has been caught up in this for so long. There's a lot of reasons why states rank where they do in economics. It has to do with a whole lot of issues. A lot of it is mismanagement and corruption. Mississippi has been a state that has been riddled with mismanagement and corruption. That's been well known. The fact that the news story that's out today is that the reporter who broke this case and is working the prosecutor who's prosecuting this case has been fired from being a prosecutor by the powers that be, the belief being that this prosecutor is getting way too close to what's actually going on. And it's not just that it's Brett Favre, it's also the governor and his people across the system. So that's what's going on in Mississippi. And there's been a real problem in Mississippi for a really long time. To your point, in the most red state, I think, in the country, where people are always talking about corruption and mismanagement and my money and why, again, and this is the thing, Rob, that you and I have known as preachers. The thing that any of us preach about the most is probably the thing we're worried about in our own lives the most. So when you get these folks saying these things like they're saying about welfare or about fraud or about government mismanagement or about the swamp, you better just look pretty dang close to see if they've got a little swamp juice on their boots, because my guess is they've been involved in that stuff. And whether or not this can all be rectified is a serious problem. The bigger issue here is not just that the rule of law has been hurt, it's that the people in Mississippi who are supposed to have millions and millions of dollars spent in the state through their lives and bank accounts has been taken away and siphoned off by this crowd, including the former Minnesota Vikings and Green Bay Packer and apparently, Mississippi State or University of Mississippi quarterback.
And here's a deep cut. Atlanta Falcons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did Brett Favre play for the Atlanta Falcons too?
Yeah, he was drafted by the Falcons and traded in his rookie year from the Falcons to the Packers.
Oh, good Lord. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, it ain't but no good. Well, what was the phrase we were coming up with? Good on you. Okay, we got to remember that one. Good on you. Hey, all right, couple more stories. In two states, Kansas and Indiana, there's big decisions being made. One today and one one that started yesterday and one that has its culmination on August 2nd. In Kansas, the headline is, "The stakes could not be higher. Kansas abortion vote set for August 2nd." If I understand this right, and maybe you understand it better, there's a vote to put into the Kansas Constitution the banning of abortion as a constitutional reality? Is it
Not
the other way?
exactly. Not exactly. So here's how it is. In Kansas, the Kansas Supreme Court has ruled that the Kansas Constitution protects a person's right to privacy and therefore protects their right to get an abortion, and that cannot be infringed on by the state legislature. So the state legislature in Kansas has proposed a amendment to the Constitution of Kansas that allows the state legislature to legislate on abortion.
Gotcha.
Now, we all know what that state legislature will do. It will outlaw abortion. And, so what is on the ballot on August 2nd is a really unfortunately named Value Them Both amendment. And there are all sorts of misconceptions that are floating around Kansas. Now, here's the really nefarious thing. This, what do you think, Doug? You think, hey, we're going to amend the Constitution of our state? Shouldn't we get it like as much participation in that as possible? Shouldn't we solicit as many people, making a decision about what the Constitution of our state is going to be? Like, seems like
generally speaking, but I guess it depends on what the amendment's about.
Yeah.
My opinion is on that.
In Kansas, the state legislature has put this constitutional amendment on the ballot on August 2nd, which is primary day. It's not on the ballot November on general election.
On election day, I see what you're saying, yeah.
It is on August 2nd on primary day.
And your indication is that means that less people are going to be turning out to vote or even know that that's a voting day or even paying attention to it. And it's going to be leaning toward the activists.
Voter turnout on primary days is always significantly lower than it is on general election day, on election day in November. This is a intentional ploy by the Kansas legislature to get this constitutional amendment passed, which gives them more power in Topeka to make this decision on on behalf of women. And it's just underhanded and dirty all the way around.
Well, maybe it'll cut the other way, right? Maybe it means that just activists are going to care, and maybe it also means that your run-of-the-mill supporter of this amendment won't also turn out, and other people will. Like, I don't know. It's an interesting process question, but maybe
we've got some candidates for common good in Kansas.
Yeah, we do. Let's get some turnout.
That been working with and helping out, and this is a huge issue they are working hard to try to stop this amendment.
Yeah, and trying to get people to turn out for it. And then in Indiana, the legislature just started, I think yesterday, they convened a special session to consider the abortion ban and are asking for a lot of turnout and a lot of input to the legislature on what people feel about this legislation that's going forward. It's this is the consequence of saying that every state can create its own set of rules around something that a lot of us have thought was so essentially built into the presumption of what an individual person could decide in the United States, that now the Supreme Court has said, no, in some states you can have a radically almost opposite view of this than in other states, and somehow that's all going to work out. That's all going to work out okay. Which, for all the ranting that we've done, I don't think I've ever made this point, which I think about a lot, actually two of them. One is, I know there's a lot of people who don't want to talk about when life begins. I think it's essential to have that conversation. And I don't think we can have a full-blooded conversation or full-throated conversation about abortion in this country without talking about personhood and when it starts, right? Yeah. There's all kinds of statements that people make. Hyper-conservatives are like, the moment of conception or fertilization, that's it. It's full life. Yep. And then there's statements that other people make on the other side that say the government at no point ever in a pregnancy has any right to say anything about a woman's choice to do with the child that's inside of her. Even people who say that stuff, I don't think believe it. I don't think anyone believes that at 29 or 30 weeks, or 34 weeks or 35 weeks, or on your way to the hospital to deliver a baby, that the state doesn't have a compelling interest in the well-being of that yet unborn child. You can't do an abortion for a child in any state that, unless the child or woman's life is in birthing person's life is in danger. So the government has a compelling interest on babies inside of mothers' wombs. We know that. Yes, they do. And to say, get off my body, it's not accurate to a level that I think we need to be accurate, right? No one thinks that no point in a pregnancy should the government have any compelling interest. Well, very few people do. So you have to then say, well, if you can't stop the pregnancy at 32 weeks, when can you? So the number of weeks matters. 24, 20, 19, 15. That matters. And it's based on something of independence and personhood. Roe versus Wade was based on the viability of the fetus. Was this to be determined a human being with individual rights at what stage of development? It's a really serious ethical question, and there's a lot of good work out there on it. The fact that we won't have that conversation in this country parallel or along with, or frankly, to my irritation, for 50 years when Roe versus Wade was settled, we didn't have this conversation. Because now all the people saying you can't talk about that now, there's no, we just have to, solve this political issue. Well, we spent half a century not talking about it. And people like, it's settled law, we don't have to talk about it. We've never dealt with it. And I really think we have to. We can't continue to go on as someone who's pro-choice, just hearing people feel like they're struggling because they know that one statement on the one hand, the government has no interest. You're get off my body at any point ever. Doesn't work when you think about it. And conception is the point. Come on. Who really, like, other than a theological point, who think so this in-between space, we have to fuel that with some thinking and with some conversation. And all the pressures to not talk about that are extraordinary. And I just think it's really harming us.
And those nuanced and important and thoughtful discussions are not going to be happening in rushed through special sessions in state legislatures.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. But again, the people who are like, hey, no time to talk about that, they're rushing this through, also said for 50 years, don't talk about it. It's just, so we have not handled a significant question like abortion in this country very well, ever. And we're not handling it well now. And now asking legislatures to make these decisions, like you say, they're not equipped for it. Like what those of us in the pro-choice side should have been doing was informing all kinds of politicians and leaders in a very crucial question of how do we understand personhood and humanity? Because it doesn't only have to do with the beginning of life, it also has to do with the end of life. Mm-hmm. When is personhood something that we no longer have to keep? And typically we say brainwaves and last breath and stuff, right? Like that's typically it. But that gets complicated. People are on machine. Remember when George Bush was first elected, the first big thing before 9/11 was embryo research. But then also there was that mom who was on life support and the family wanted to take her off and somebody else sued. Remember all that? Terry Schiavo or something? Am I remembering this right? Yep. Like way back, right?
Yeah.
We've been invited in this country repeatedly because every one of us is born, and a child is born in this country, I think, every 14 seconds, and people die every like 12 seconds in this country and every 7 seconds around the world or something like that. Like, life and death are happening all the time. We got plenty of chances to talk about it. The fact that we won't and don't, and even now, people are just like, oh, if you bring up anything other than the established talking points, you are just jumped on. I promise you. If I were still on Twitter, I'd be nervous that people were going to start tweeting about this if they're listening, because there's just an orthodoxy on all sides of this that allow no one to talk about it in any, in any way that veers from some group's decision about what we can talk about. And it's not serving any of us very, very well. So now you end up with these legislatures having to make these decisions, and it's fueled by who knows what, just babies on one end, like a zygote is the same thing as a human being. It's just like, well, there was something else I was going to talk about, but as soon as I start saying that stuff, my mind just goes crazy. We used to say in the Vote Common Good world, look, we've talked, people in America don't talk about abortion. We've talked about it more, whatever period of sentences that we've been having than most people do all year. And that remains true. Mm-hmm. The real issues around, because look, I do think a woman has the first choice or the first responsibility in any choice of what happens with her body. No doubt about it. When someone becomes pregnant, that becomes this uniquely complex situation, which we almost all recognize. Therefore, we're into something that is unique in the human experience. All of us have been a participant in it. Every single one of us has been connected to our birth mother in a way, and were dependent and codependent and then became independent, like all of that, and how life happens and where we base it and on what. And there's some conservative arguments that I've listened to on personhood and when it begins that are shockingly compelling, right? About like the difference between 15 weeks and 24 weeks and all this stuff. And I'm where I am, I'm at the 19-week, 20-week point in my own view on this currently. But there's some people that make some really compelling ideas, and they're not all total, zygote is the same as 3-month-old, playing in a crib. Mm-hmm. They're not those people. But it's complicated. And if we're going to make laws now at a state level and not say an individual has a right, but now we're talking about 50 plus legislative responses to all of this, we're woefully behind in an ability to talk about it. And frankly, on the progressive side, the side where I am, there's less conversation about the realities of any of this than there is on the side that I totally disagree with, which is a little shocking when you come to find find out that reality. So there's a lot of good website stuff out about this, and you just start doing how do we understand personhood ethically? Boy, it gets something. And I would just encourage all of us to just be careful in your language about the government should never say anything to any woman about a pregnancy, because we just know that's not true. There's all kinds of trouble that happens when a pregnant person, ingests drugs and harms the child inside her body. And we don't want it to be like, you do whatever you want with that fetus. Nobody, with that baby developing in your body, you can, if it harms the baby, that's your business. Nobody can say anything about it. No, that's not true. We don't allow that. And the fact that some people have a difficult time even hearing that and then being like, whoa, I don't know where this is going. That's that trigger thing that I know is alive and well in the world. That's something that has allowed this to just run away, and I think it's why public opinion in these states is so wildly off, because it's not serving us well.
Yeah, seems to be a theme on today's show about how important it is to be intentional and nuanced with your language. And,
And look, for all the thought, people are like, well, these semantics like Christian nationalism or where did life begin? Like, okay, hang on a minute. If someone calls you by the wrong name, if you care, as you and I both do, about chosen pronouns that matter for people, yeah, no, like semantics matter. It really, it's a real thing. People are often doing that. Like, oh, that's just a matter of semantics. Don't. Like,
No.
really? I mean, as communicating human beings, is there is there something wrong with words? Like, and I don't mean like you're just arguing about flammable and inflammable. Like, that's just semantics. They actually mean the same thing, right? So you see on the side of a truck, inflammable, and it means that it can start on fire. And you're like, oh, inflammable doesn't mean non-flammable. Okay, that's just a semantic difference between flammable and inflammable. That's not the same thing with all topics, however.
right.
There's a whole lot of topics on which somebody could really benefit from some deeper thought. We should do that old Saturday Night Live thing with Jack Handy, like deep thoughts.
Yeah.
All right, an hour and 15 minutes, Rob. Is that good?
There we go. We're good.
Extended our workout today. Hey, thanks all. Thanks, Peggy. Thanks,
Hey, and Peggy,
Jim.
feel better. Saw your note there that you're recovering from a stroke. We're thinking about you,
Oh,
Peggy.
wow,
Be
Peggy.
healthy.
Ah, yeah, letting us all know. Okay.
Yeah, but Bonnie and Dave and Jim, as always, Barbara.
Yeah, just good to have all of you.
Yeah.
If you only listen to this, we appreciate it. We know that many of you do. Feel free to send us a note every now and again. Say hello. We like that too. All right, so Rob, any elections today? By the way, I think it's Tuesday. Is this
No.
Are we election free?
Nope.
Nothing
We are
till
election free today. Yep, next week.
next week, and then the following week, right? We're talking about like I know Minnesota has one. Oh, by the way, we're not done yet. My doorbell rings yesterday. I
Yeah.
go to the doorbell, like, as a middle-aged man living a sedentary life, and like somebody's at my door. Oh, this is exciting. Maybe I have to sign for a package. And it was a door knocker. A canvasser.
Canvasser.
A person with political conversations on her mind coming to people's doors. And she said, "Hey, can I give you this card of the person I think you should vote for to be your state representative?" And I was like, "What? Hang on a minute. I don't recognize who this person is. What are you saying? There's a different state representative?" She said, "Oh yeah, this part of Edina where I live has been, in the February redistricting. Now you're in District 50, not in 49 any longer." And I was like,
Oh,
"What?
oh,
I'm not in the same district that
you got gerrymandered.
I got redistricted."
Yeah.
And I thought, I pay a lot of attention. I know the names of my representatives.
Yeah.
I didn't know this. It was,
Yeah.
I was going to start the show with this today. I forgot about this. It was shocking. Like,
Yeah.
we spent literally an hour and 15 minutes, 18 minutes talking about politics. And yet in my own district, I got moved and now somebody else, and I would have run for that seat. I'm kidding. I don't know, like, the feeling I had of like,
Yeah.
what's going on? A lot of my other neighbors, this person comes and they'd probably just be like, "I just totally don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I have other districts and I'm in a different thing. And now there's going to be some primary. And do I vote for DFL or GOP? Because that's what she said. Do you typically vote for the DFL or for the GOP? DFL here is the Democratic Farm Labor Party. DFL or the GOP? I'm like, oh, I've decided to never vote for a Republican again in my life because I think they've, I did say, probably not going to live all that long, so it's not a great promise. But I'm out for that crowd, and I'm all in. And then she tells me, "Oh yeah, we've been redistricted," and I'm like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
So I just don't know how much more attention someone can pay that I didn't know this, and I don't even know how I don't even like, I don't know. Somehow I should have known. I don't know. I don't know if it's me or someone else. just my sympathies
Is it
to
that
those
we
of
don't
us
read newspapers anymore? Is that it? Feels like that's the kind of thing that would have been in the newspaper.
Yeah. Funny enough, we
don't
get
know.
this like little local newspaper, you know, like the little city things that come around and it gets delivered. I glanced through that. Maybe I missed that edition.
I don't know.
Because I was going to say, I even do read the newspaper. The little one that probably would have had that. I mean, maybe I should have just assumed that there was some redistricting because I did see a Dean Phillips, who I'm a big fan of, sign really close to my house. And he's not my congressman, Ilhan Omar is. And I'm like, why is there a Dean Phillips sign in that person's yard? So now I was like, well, maybe the whole thing got recalibrated. Yeah. This redistricting business just makes people feel like they don't know what's going on. You know why? Yep. Because I don't know what's going on. It makes you feel punky about not knowing what's going on. So if any of the rest of you feel like you don't know what's going on, well,
You're
me
in good
too.
company.
Welcome to this nonsense. All right. Anything else, Rob?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Good luck.